Welcome aboard to the Heavy Metal Truckers, where we give our thoughts and perspectives on all things heavy, even if you don't like it. We are your hosts. So Frosty, by chance, has managed to be on a 34-hour reset around the area, and he's actually at a Halloween party tonight. So, yeah, he should be able to join us next week, barring nothing else occurs. So in this video, we are actually giving our review on the latest album from Evoken. I had it. Mendacium, somewhere along those lines.
Something like that.
Yeah. And you may begin.
But when did I first hear about Evoken? A few weeks ago, we covered the first single from this album.
Well done.
And the only single we covered from this album.
Yeah. Even though there's technically two, but I didn't discover this shit till later.
So yeah. So not long. So going to this album, all I had was the previous song that we had listened to go off of. So open mind. Didn't really have much expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, this album was interesting for me.
All right.
So, you know how 90% of the time we'll say that songs sound better within the album
Context
than
of
they
the
do as
album,
singles.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is going to sound weird for multiple reasons, and I'll explain them in a moment. One of them is because we always say that. But for this album, it was the opposite for me.
Okay.
Now, I'll explain why. Each song individually, I really enjoyed. I loved the sound of them, the feel of them, the gothic feel really that they had. Each individual song, while they were long, they didn't feel super long.
Mm-hmm.
Individually, but when you put them into an album, even though the album flowed really well, which is another reason why it's weird for me to say that.
Yeah.
Because they were so long, and because of the style of music it was,
mm-hmm.
it made it hard for somebody like me with ADHD to be able to concentrate for that long straight on something where a lot of it sounds very similar.
I had a suspicion that would be an issue for you on this album, or even within the realm of Funeral Doom. I knew that'd be like a challenge for you.
Yeah, like I actually had to listen to this album in two sections because of that, because I knew if I had kept going, I wouldn't have been able to really pay attention, because even though I was enjoying what I was hearing,
mm-hmm.
my brain just wouldn't let me do it. So that is why, for me, I like the songs individually, but you put them all together, my brain won't let me do it.
So do you think it was potentially the order that everything was, or just in general, it would have regardless?
I don't know if the order would have made a difference.
I'll explain later, but I can understand.
But no, like musically, I enjoyed it. Like it had that gothic feel, and I think I said this when we listened to, what is it, Matan, whatever the first song is,
or something
Matins.
like that.
Yeah, the one that we listened to. I think I said it then too. You get mesmerized by it almost.
You do.
And it's very interesting in that way. And so, musically I enjoyed it, even though other than sections here and there, I wouldn't say the album was overly heavy,
but surprisingly not, given within the Funeral Doom.
Way the music, right. But because of the way the music was written and done, it felt heavier than it was as you were listening to it.
Correct.
But I still enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed every song. I don't know if I go as far as to say I absolutely loved it, but I enjoyed it. Like it's something that if I'm just chilling, mellowing out, whatever, I could listen
It's
to and enjoy.
perfection.
Yeah. You know, it was all in all, I really enjoyed the album. Like I said, it's not something I could sit and listen to all in one go because my brain won't let me do it. But
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like I'm not knocking the album or the music in any way, saying that. It's just how my brain is.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I actually gave, considering it's the first time I've heard them, I actually gave the album an 8. I enjoyed it. I thought
That's
it was
impressive
a
for
solid
you.
album. Yeah.
Nice. So, my introduction to Evoken, technically it was a long time ago. We're talking probably whenever I learned of the group, Frowning. This is way back. Hell, could have been, was it pre-2015? It might have been, because I think Extinct had already been out. If I'm not, let me look this up real quick because it's gonna bother me. Or no, it was no, it wasn't Extinct. It was I was listening to them. I had first heard them whenever Funeral Impressions came out, which was 2014. So it was
10 years ago.
Yeah.
7 years ago.
So yeah, I discovered Frowning then because I remember I discovered Frowning back then because I was trying to look up something along that realm, and I know whenever I'd start to get more into the Frowning, Evoken was one of the ones that came up because it was like they were almost within the realm of Funeral Doom. Evoken was to Funeral Doom whereas like Candlemass is to Doom Metal. Like, from the way I understood it, at least at the time, they were pretty much the godfathers of Funeral Doom. And so, like, I knew of them, didn't really listen all that much into them just because I was so into Frowning at the time. But whenever I listened to this album, I went in just knowing that this was going to be right within my interest. And once we listened to the single, it absolutely proved it for me. However, it was interesting because Evoken, even though, yes, they are Funeral Doom, they incorporate a haunting aspect. At least to this record, they incorporated a massively deep haunting effect. Someone could even go as far as to say almost unsettling. But so I was very excited to hear the album, and once I did, it went way out there. Like, not in a bad way. It felt like a musical journey. And so, just as Doppler said, you can't really just sit down and listen to this or listen to it while you're necessarily relaxing. This is an album to where you could have maybe 3 or 4 hours you'd have to take out of the day. Almost prepare yourself and then listen to this, and then there's so much to uncover. Just because there's so many, well, it doesn't seem like it, but there's so many nuances that you can pick out from this. And there's so many things to appreciate within this album. For one thing, the guy's vocals, it just goes from like the deeper onset, the very much deeper, deathly vocals that can be found within Funeral Doom, but also he did more of the almost ghostly type. I'm not sure if you want to say growls, but it could be categorized within that. What really fascinated me more so about this album was I almost feel like they were a progressive group that was doing Funeral Doom, because there were potential timing changes. There were the way they constructed the album or composed it, there was some changes within it that I didn't really find in other Funeral Doom, which fascinated me immensely. Like, they had a section where they just started doing almost like old school death metal, and I was really impressed by that. It caught me off guard. But it was wonderful. And then they kind of had the liberty to kind of do various things here and there to where it almost sounded like it could have been the beginning of an album, or it could have been the end, or just whatever. So for me, I don't know what fucking track I listened to, just because the flow of it was so bizarre, but in the best way possible. And like I kept on trying to kind of, because typically even within Funeral Doom, like Frowny, I can tend to pick out whenever a track ends or begins or whatever the fact is. But as I look at this track list here, I thought there were only like 5 or 6 tracks, because I know Funeral Doom can be upwards of like 10 minutes a track. I didn't realize that they even had the track that's 2 minutes in here. That's really short for Funeral Doom, so I was surprised by that. So to see there's 8 tracks in here, I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't fucking tell you what was what. But the fact remains, for me, just because this album felt like more of a journey, and listening to it, and it was an experience, not necessarily just enjoying an album, but it was an experience, kind of like how all the fucking Tool fans say that every show is an experience. I've never been to a Tool show. Even then, apparently you're not experiencing the show right if you're not high on shrooms or something, or Molly, whatever. So that's never going to happen. So, but it's that experience. And so for me, the album flowed amazingly well, and also more so in the perspective, if you kind of go into the mindset with it, that these are guys that could have been very influenced by progressive metal. Like, it begins to make a little bit more sense. If that's the case, I honestly don't know. I need to look into it. But I was so impressed by this album, what all it offered, and then even some more. There was one section that it was just instrumental. That's all it was, and it was beautifully composed. But I easily give this album a 9, because again, it was so well done. I'd consider giving it 9.5, but within this, there's always something, like, there could have been something that you would have done differently, or maybe that you weren't too sure about that part. So it's like, you might knock off a hair or two, but overall, it's one of the best things you could hear within its respective genre. So I can see why Evoken is some would arguably say as the godfathers of Funeral Doom. There's no question to me. So yeah, that's my take on it. Well done. I do want to get this, but I would have to honestly get it in vinyl, because listening to this, do you think it almost would have sounded better coming off a vinyl player or turntable?
In some ways, yeah. Especially the I don't want to say softer parts, but the
slower kind of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Like, it almost sounded to me that they recorded some and they composed some of this album almost to be meant to be played on a turntable, which I know the turntable and vinyl popularity has greatly risen within the last, like, almost 5 years now. So I would, if I were to get this, I think I'd have to get it on vinyl, which, with the price of vinyl, it's going to be a while till I can even consider picking this up. All right, so we are here with Frosty to get his history and his thoughts and perspectives with Evoken's latest album, Mendacium. So let's see what he has to say.
Well, as per usual, my catchphrase on the channel, as per usual.
We need to get that shirt.
As per usual, legitimately. So as per usual, this is my first introduction to Evoken. I was told by Pincushion that he probably suspects my thoughts, for the most part, on the album, based off of what he knows my listening habits are and everything. And for the most part, he is definitely correct on it. Just the style of Evoken and everything is just not something that really like suits me per se. So I was able to listen to the entirety of the album. I didn't try to skip over any. I didn't I didn't just
Apologies for that. Go ahead. My
bad. So my take on the album. It's definitely not something that I'm gonna actively go and search out listening to or anything, and that's just based off of my own styles of listening and everything. However, I did manage to enjoy one song and a portion of a song.
That's still impressive over you.
And I did like the musicality behind it. So there is that.
Yeah.
So like I definitely enjoyed like the musicianship within the entirety of the album. It was actually pretty exquisite. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The track that I really enjoyed, I think his name is Prime. It was the third track on the album, and it was just like a slow, easy listening sort of with I don't think it had any vocals in it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely enjoyed that track on the album. And then the intro to the song for one of the songs, it was the longest track on the album. I think it was like 10 minutes long or something. I don't remember exactly what the name of the track was.
It's pretty typical for a Funeral Doom piece to be 10 minutes, so yeah.
Yeah. So that track on the album, the intro, like literally the first like I want to say it was like 4 minutes worth, was I thoroughly enjoyed. The vocals is just not my strong suit when it comes to this style of music. However, I mean, I can appreciate the musicianship behind it and everything. So all in all, I would rate this and this is me knowing the musicianship and everything, my own personal opinion, as per almost everything on this. No, as per everything on the channel. I rate this about a 6.5.
That's pretty good for you.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give it a lower rating because of me not liking the style or anything. I really wanted to take in as much of the musicianship as possible and try to venture out away from what I would typically listen to. And I really, really paid attention to the entirety of the songs and everything. And I really enjoyed what I did listen to, what I did hear, and all of that. So that's why I've got a higher rating on this one.
Okay. So, deal with Evoken. First off, yes, they are Funeral Doom, but more interestingly, they are some of the veterans when it comes to Funeral Doom, and you can clearly hear that in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this discussion with Doppler because, like, I knew of Evoken, but didn't really listen to them much, mainly because when it came to Funeral Doom, I was kind of gravitated more towards Frowning because I was the first, to my recollection, first Funeral Doom group I came across. And I had seen, even in the groups I'm in, there was so much talk over Evoken and I think Bellwitch as well. Bellwitch is another old Funeral Doom group, which I think they have an album that is literally 3 or 4 tracks long, and it's an hour long.
Yeah.
But Evoke, like, 'cause I hadn't really heard their previous material up until like fully listening to this, and one of the fascinating things about Evoken to me was that they were almost progressive in their style. They would kind of venture out of typical,
the stereotypical Funeral Doom and everything.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that I'd say the standard formula for Funeral Doom, which is just very slow tempo. Vocals tend to be very atmospheric and deep to the point of being guttural in some aspects. But it's like one chord could be played out for like 30 seconds to a minute. And they kind of ventured outside of that, which I found to be quite interesting. And the way the album was laid out, I found it kind of challenging to know when a track ended and when it began, just because of how they laid out everything. And to me, this album wasn't necessarily something that you just kind of listen to. It was to really be able to understand this album and what it was doing. To me, this was almost a journey that the listener would have to take with Evoken. And I even asked Doppler this, and I'll ask you the same thing. Based off what you heard and what you recall hearing, do you think that this album is more so meant to be listened to on vinyl?
I could see what you're getting at. I could definitely see what you're getting at, and I would be quite intrigued to see what it would sound like off of a one.
Yeah, I told Doppler I would love to get this album, but the thing is, I'd have to save up for it because I don't think I could get this on a CD. I think it'd have to be vinyl, just because there's a lot of atmosphere that goes into this. There's a lot of more kind of, even though it's Funeral Doom, there's some focus within the mid-range, and a lot of what I was hearing would be mostly well captured through vinyl. Of course, it could also be done in CD, but there is this, of course, characteristic with vinyl where there's not much sub frequencies. You can have some high end, but it's primarily mid-range focused, and I'm just intrigued as to hear what this would sound like going primarily analog.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I of course gave this a fairly high rating. I rated it, but not just necessarily because it's within my spectrum of what I focus in, but because of how everything was composed, and the composition, and just how it intrigued me so much to the point that I don't care to, I really want to embrace this on a turntable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get that kind of perspective or desire with anything really that's come out recently.
Oh no, definitely, and I completely understand that, the composure and everything. I mean, I think that's what kept me listening and kept me from just going, look, this is really just, I know I got to listen to this and everything, but it's just not my cup of tea. None of that. But it was the musicality behind it, the composition of it, and everything. I was just,
the composition. Composition and characteristics is kind of why I thought you also would be intrigued by it, because it does step out of the standard formula for Funeral Doom.
Oh no, definitely, and I mean it's because of that I had to give this a higher rating than I would typically with something that is Funeral Doom.
All right, well, that was Frosty's perspective with Evoken's Mendacium. I'm pretty certain the album is called, because at this point I don't remember, and it was a bit of an interesting album name. But yeah, that was that, and we will get back to the end of this video. But yeah, that's our take on Evoken. Frosty will be in here at some point, but until then, guys, whether musically, lyrically, or literally, keep rolling heavy, and thank you for joining us.